Africa will be great. Africa will rise again. Mali has just definitely put an end to its dependence on France by cancelling the 11 colonial agreements imposed on Africa countries since 1960. Guys, Africa will be great. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are watching from. Welcome to BMS News. Breaking of the colonial agreement with France. I invite you to understand the Malian case against imperialist France. After independence, 14 French-speaking countries signed 11 agreements with France, which are as follows. Agreement number 1, the colonial debt to repay the benefits of colonization. That is to say that the newly independent states must reimburse the cost of infrastructure built by France during the colonization. We are always looking for the details of the cost, the evaluation of the benefits, and the payment conditions imposed by France on African countries. Agreement number 2. The automatic confiscation of national financial reserves. That is to say that African countries must deposit their financial reserves with the Banque de France. Thus, France has been guiding the financial reserves of 14 African countries since 1961. These countries are Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Brazzaville, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon. Thus, the governance of monetary policy remains astronymous and incomplete due to the fact that it is managed directly by the French. Guys, just imagine how these countries that I just named are slaves to France. Guys, I'll just allow you people to watch this. Just watch how Africans are slaves to other nations.
Africa has been independent for more than 60 years. Yet we experience challenges of development even after 6 years of independence. The Western countries cannot live without African continent, using our fellow African brothers to destroy ourselves. We want peace in Mali and welcome the dropping of French as an official language in Mali. That is one progressive movement. Doesn't mean French cannot be spoken, but to say we have conquered the imperialists and colonizers and continue to have their languages as official languages is self-imprisonment. We call for peace in the land of Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, who paid the price of his own blood by the coup orchestrated by the Western. We call for peace in Sudan and reconciliation of the Sudanese people, who are tired to see the silence of the international community towards the continuous bloodshed in the eastern DRC. The Western countries supporting some neighboring countries in DRC to destabilize the eastern DRC. We shouldn't find it exciting that African countries can fight amongst themselves with ease, especially fighting around territorial expansions. Africa is one country, it's not even a continent. These borders we see and we experience here in our continent were imposed on us by the imperialists. No African brother should derive pleasure out of killing other African people. We say this because we are advocating for one Africa with one currency, with one legislature, with one military and one president, because we believe that these small pockets of countries are the ones that make international communities undermine Africa. Just imagine one president of Russia or America calling all the presidents of all countries to their countries to be addressed by one president. We see that as belittling and undermining our continent. We believe that if we have one currency based on our mineral and natural resources, it will be one such a strong currency, and it will place Africa firmly on international table. We want the people of Western Sahara to have their land back without any interference by Morocco. But Morocco and Western Sahara should exist as brothers and sisters and not see each other as enemies. We're asking for peace and long-lasting solution between Western Sahara and Morocco. And that peace should be characterized by the release of the land of the people of Western Sahara. We must not fear intimidation or loss of funding simply because we are too scared to condemn the crimes against the people who violate the rights of others. We want to make the same call with regards to our friends and comrades in Cuba who suffer under the yoke of trade embargoes because they dare to be socialist. The trade embargoes against Cuba must be lifted, as it is inhuman to punish a nation for taking different ideological leaning with regard to how they run their society. The Cubans helped us fight for our liberation in Africa. They continue to help the whole world with quality healthcare interventions, and they don't send soldiers to go and bombard other people's nations. They send doctors to go and save life and make sure that our people receive the primary health care. We are calling for an end to ideologically inspired sanctions by nations in the West that are used as a tool to undermine the sovereignty of nations in the global South and Africa. We call for lifting of sanctions in Zimbabwe, not that we agree with the people, with the government of Zimbabwe or the president of Zimbabwe, but it is the people, the ordinary people of Zimbabwe, who are suffering under these sanctions. And we want the sanctions lifted, and we want the people of Zimbabwe, particularly those who are in South Africa, to return back to Zimbabwe and make their own determination as to how they want their country to succeed. But that country will never succeed under the sanctions. We have noted the communication from Cyril Ramaphosa's office that Russia President Vladimir Putin will not attend the next month's BRICS summit in South Africa. It is our understanding that President Putin's withdrawal is a consequence of South Africa state's reluctance to be firm on international affairs and their inability to resist pressure from NATO to arrest President Putin. South Africa is at the current stage led by an individual who cannot take a firm position on any matter, even if his life depends on it. We therefore want to caution all nations represented here today, especially members of BRICS, that South Africa is currently led by a spineless government that will never meaningfully take forward efforts to grow the strength of the global South and its allies. Any effort to fight against imperialism, the calls for de-dollarization, and for an alliance that will place BRICS nations on a stronger footing in the globe will always be undermined by a cowardly government in South Africa. Members of international community, we hope that countries such as China and India will, in solidarity with President Putin, not allow their presidents to attend the BRICS summit. Because what South Africa did to President Putin, it's a serious humiliation of a sitting president. And in solidarity, and as BRICS members, heads of states of those countries should also stay away from attending BRICS, because South Africa's foreign policy and its sovereignty has been undermined by NATO forces and the USA. Members of the international community, we take this opportunity to call for a meaningful solidarity with Palestine. Under the EFF government, there will not be the Israeli embassy in South Africa until there is peace in Palestine. We must not just pay a lip service when people are dying in their numbers. The people of Palestine continue to suffer unspeakable human rights violations, and their land is annexed constantly. Their children are murdered, their sites to practice religion are destroyed, while the whole world watches. I say so because we are the beneficiaries of international solidarity ourselves. If there was no international solidarity, support to South Africa, we're not going to be where we are. And this is our turn to also show support to all those who are being oppressed by other nations.